Let me begin this morning with a question. Are there any fishers in the audience? Oh, look, that was quick. I thought I had to pull out hands. Hands up if you are a fisher person, a man or a fisher woman. Okay, so there are a few, and there's a few more of you that I know you fish and you didn't put your hand up, and that's okay as well. So let me ask the fishers, men and women in our audience, what would be the worst thing that you could imagine going fishing? Would it be that the fish don't bite? Would it be that you lose the rod in the water? Would it be that you fall into the water? How embarrassing would that be? What's the worst thing that can happen? What's a bad day for someone who loves to fish? How about this one? How about if the fishing line gets tangled up? Oh man, that's terrible. And most of the time, it's two lines that get tangled up, right? And you're pulling it apart. Sometimes, if you're really good at it, you can get your line tangled up all by yourself. And there's no other line anywhere. And what do you do when a line gets tangled up? I mean, really tangled up. I suppose you could try to untangle a line, but that's onerous. That's hard, isn't it? And so the best thing you can do is what? Cut the line and start over again. Yeah, that's what you do. And just like fishing lines get tangled up and we have to start over again, so sometimes we can get tangled up as well. And we have to start over again. And there's all kinds of things that can get us tangled up and into knots and all chained down. You say, well, what kind of things get us tangled up? What about bad habits that we can't seem to break? What about bad relationships that just pull you down? What about addictions, to substance and other things, or bad choices and bad decisions? Even false ideas can get you tangled up. Even worthless habits and activities can do that. Ever seen someone addicted to sports? That's a little tangled up, isn't it? Ever heard of the word workaholic? That's being tangled up. Ever seen someone make money their idol or god? Yeah, of course. What about the chain smoker? What about the person who has issues with food, anorexia and bulimia? So there are many things in life that can get us tangled up just like a fishing line gets tangled up. And tangled up is what Israel was during the time of Elijah. And that's where I'm going this morning. Tangled up they were with worthless idols and false gods that bled the people out and that made them feel used up and thrown away. And never had the children of Israel been as tangled up with false gods as in the days of King Ahab. You heard it this morning in the Family Life Hour, those of you who came. And let's read this, 1 Kings chapter 16. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than those who came before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. He set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he built in Samaria. Ahab also made an Asherah pole, and he did more, listen to this, he did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. This is who he was. Evil King Ahab and his wicked wife Jezebel. They did more, it says, to arouse the anger of the Lord than all the other kings did combined prior to them. And this came at a particularly sad chapter in their history. King Solomon, for all of his wisdom and spiritual insight, did not end his life and reign well. He himself got tangled up. He himself went into idol worship. He himself was responsible to start it out, causing the kingdom to split. And the kings who followed him, the successive kings after him, came and went with most doing evil in the sight of the Lord, but none as wicked as Ahab, spurred on by his pagan wife Jezebel. They were so tangled up with fake gods, and who, because they were fake, could not respond to them, could not help them, and certainly could not save them, because frankly, honestly, Baal is a fake. He is a fake god. And so the question this morning is, who was Baal? Who or what was Baal? And the more important question is Baal still around today? Oh, you bet he is. Baal is very much alive in this world. So who is Baal, you say? Let me give you what I think Baal is. Baal is the first thing you reach out to other than God. Baal is the first thing you grab in times of trouble. Now, of course, the hope is that you and I, all of us, would reach out to God, right? In both good times and bad times, the hope is that we would turn to him and call on his name. That God would be the very first one that we would come to, and that this is so our instinct that we would turn to God even without thinking about it. That our first instinct would be to turn to God. That's the hope. That's the dream. That our first inkling is to call out to him. And of course, it's God we do turn to, right? Our first reaction is God, isn't it? Our first breath is God. The first thought in our head is God. The first word of our mouth is God. That's the dream. That's the hope. And you know, to be followers of Jesus means exactly that. It means we turn to him as instinctively as we breathe in the air around us. Oh, I just took another breath. Didn't even notice it. Oh, another one right now. Instinctively, intuitively, I breathe in the air. And as instinctively, intuitively, I turn to God. That's the question. Who do you turn to instinctively and automatically? We don't think about our next breath. It's so instinctive, we do it without even thinking about it. And that's what we do with God. In good times and in bad times, we turn to him. He's the air we breathe. He's our daily bread. He's our instinct. And any instinct other than God becomes our Baal. And it takes on many different forms, shapes, and sizes. And, you know, yes, of course, we do turn to other things. And there are other things we should eventually turn to. Yes, of course, you should call the doctor and get that medication. Of course, you should reach out to your family and get them to support you. Yes, of course, you should talk to your friends and get them to help you. And so there's many things that we should eventually do, and they're all perfect and absolutely right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the first thing you do. The first reaction, the natural instinct. What's the very first thing? What's the default setting in your heart and spirit? Who do you turn to? Now, mind you, as I was saying that, I'm also realizing there are some things that we should never turn to, even eventually. It's no brainer. We should never turn to addictive substances. We should never turn to things like drugs or cigarettes. We should never turn to gaming like gambling, you know. We should never turn to inappropriate relationships or casual relationships. We should never turn to the paranormal, such as the horoscope or card reading or, palm reading. We should never look for an escape, even eventually. For some people, I'm not sure if you know this, but for some people, shopping is an escape. And for others, it's food becomes the escape. And for others, they literally escape. They run away, literally, physically, they're gone. And so these are some of the things that we should never, ever turn to. But there are many things that we can and should turn to, such as the friend, the family, the expert, the inner resolve, the inner strength, and so on and so forth. My point is not who we eventually turn to. My point is, who's the first thing we turn to? So who is it? What do we instinctively turn to? What's the first thing out of our mouth? What's the first reach we take? What's the first instinct? If it's not God, then it's Baal. And by the way, it's one or the other. It cannot be both. Like Dylan wrote in his song, you old hippies, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to have to serve somebody. Maybe the devil or might be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. The very thing that Jesus said. He said, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one, or love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. And then he says, no one can serve both God and money. And oh, by the way, in here, he puts a name to Baal. He calls him money, mammon. One of the many faces and names of Baal, by the way. In this case, Baal's name happens to be money. If you read the rest of the story, you know the man that he's talking about was made money his Baal. And as you now know, Baal has many faces. He has many names. And the point is that we cannot serve both God and Baal. The very thing, coming back to Elijah, that Elijah said to the children of Israel, he says, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. You're going to have to serve somebody, Dylan wrote. It's going to be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. And if not God, then it's Baal. In his various incarnations, in his various forms. And it's not going to be an either or. It's going to be an instead. See, you cannot say, I serve God, but I also trust my money. You cannot say that. You cannot say, I serve God, but I rely on no one but myself. Or I serve God, but I reach for the drag or the drink or the drug. And this brings me to the showdown at Mount, by the way, it's Mount Carmel and not Mount Caramel. This is what they did in Sunday school this morning, just so the kids would remember. At least one class did. I thought that was brilliant. This is now my caramel. The showdown at Mount Caramel. The showdown at Mount Carmel. Let's read it. Elijah said to them, I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I'll prepare the other bull and put it on the wood and not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. Gary Enright wrote that people were trying to hold together 2 mutually exclusive loyalties. He calls it impossible. It was time to choose. The Lord and Baal could not be both the true God. And so it was time to choose. And this was a hard choice. This after many years of idol worship, after many years of having this fake god Baal around. Honestly, they knew nothing but Baal. They might have paid lip service to the Lord, but deep in their heart of hearts, they knew that Baal was their God. And they would turn to him instinctively. Baal was the air they breathed. Baal was all they had known for years and years. Their lives were deeply entangled like fishing rods and lines with this fake god. And when you think about this, doesn't that sound like an awful lot of people in our world today? There are people who have known nothing but running away. There are people who have known nothing but throwing money at everything that comes along. Others who've only trusted themselves all of their lives. Others who are so used to reaching for the bottle or the pill or 1,000 other things. And over the years, it becomes the air they breathe. It's all they know. And friends, I want to tell you that's okay, I suppose. But there will come a time, and let's call it Mount Carmel. There will come a Mount Carmel day in everyone's life when the likes of Baal will not come through because Baal is fake. There will come a Mount Carmel day in every one of our lives. And you may say, well, I've never had a day like this. And you may think, well, I'm really lucky. Yeah, maybe. It's going to come. And some of you had these already. And there's more than one day that's called Mount Carmel. There will come a moment in time when you will actually need your God to come through for you. In fact, I'll almost guarantee you that you will have days like those. Moments in time when we need God to show up and see us through a circumstance, a situation, a crisis, something that's happened where we will need a miracle from God. If he doesn't do it, it's not going to be done. And if our God is Baal, there will be no response. Why? Because Baal is fake. He's as fake as a $3 bill is fake. Fake gods. So, Elijah is going to squeeze that pimple. And squeeze he did, and look what came out. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first. Since there are so many of you, call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given to him and prepared it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us! They shouted, but there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. And at noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he's a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened. Wow, talk about goading someone. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears as was their custom until their blood flowed. Midday passed. They continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But listen to the epitaph. There was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Why? Because Baal is a fake god. Do not trust him. Money is a fake god. Self-reliance is a fake god. Running away is a fake god. Anything, addictive substances is a fake god. I'm telling you, Baal is a fake god and you cannot trust him. I guess he's all right to have around until you need him to come through. And when you do, you've built your house on sand. And he's not there. Not only is he fake, but guess what else he does? He will bleed you out. He will bleed you out. Take a look at the spectacle on top of Mount Carmel. The bloody spectacle of verse 28. That was just another normal day in worshiping Baal. So they shouted louder, slashed themselves with swords and spears as was their custom until their blood flowed. This was their custom. This was a normal day in that kind of a worship. Elijah might have egged them on, but they were doing what they were doing that day, though, they had done every time they invoked the name of Baal. And think about the effort to do something like this. How exhausting. How absolutely exhausting. Shouting, jumping, cutting themselves, until they were covered in blood, dancing and raving, crying out, Baal, answer us, Baal, answer us. I mean, that's crazy. Who does that? Fake gods use up our time and energy and then deplete us at the end and leave us empty. They literally will bleed us out. Just like these priests were being bled out. You go and ask the alcoholic if he's fulfilled, and he'll tell you, I'm depleted. You go ask the shopaholic, and she'll tell you she's absolutely exhausted. You ask the guy who jumps from bed to bed, and he'll tell you it's so numbing and empty. These fake gods are like dogs chasing their tails. This is what Elijah called out. Fake, fake. And how exhausting, how self-mutilating, how depleting this is. Baal is not a harmless little fake god. Baal will eventually bleed you out. And some of you this morning have come here and you bled out. You're depleted. You're empty. You've come to the end. You're saying, is there more? Some of you are like fishing lines tangled up. That some of you that hear my voice, you're like fishing lines so tangled up, and you're saying, is there any hope? You've tried to unknot it, but the more you pull, the harder it gets. And you're stuck in an addiction and a chain. And you're saying, is there any hope? There's hope this morning. Let's turn the corner. Is it any wonder then when a depleted, exhausted, and bled out person encounters the true God, that they so often speak of experiencing a great relief, a great joy, and a great rest? I've seen people who've rested in the presence of the Lord. Have you? I've seen men and women so exhausted, so depleted, that when they finally meet God, the true God, they literally will rest. In fact, there's an article in the Herald, a testimonial from someone who she experienced exactly that. And sometimes I've seen men and women literally fall and simply rest in the rejuvenation of the Lord's presence. And I've seen people get up with such joy and such freedom. And I'm saying, Lord, won't you take my tangled up lines and won't you bring me rest? And that actually brings me to the part of the story this morning where the true God does show up. And the contrast is not more startling. Let's read it. Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. I love that. I can stop and preach that right there. Elijah is a type of Christ in that moment. Elijah is a type of the Holy Spirit in that moment. Christ says, come here to me. All you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come here to me. They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. He dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, laid it on the wood. And he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Do it again, he said, and they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. And the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, even the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the Lord, he is God. There's nothing exhausting about this. Did you notice? No shouting, no cutting. He's not trying to get God's attention. He's not trying to wake him up from a slumber. Our God never sleeps. Our God never slumbers. The Lord God is fully alive. He's always at the ready. He's eager to come and send fire into our lives and circumstances. Just a simple prayer. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. And that's all it took, a simple prayer. Didn't even shout it. No need to whip yourself into a frenzy. No need to do crazy things. And the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and licked up the water in the trench. I want to wrap it up here this morning and say to us that the prophets of Baal show us that people exist for their God. God shows us that the Lord is there for us. We do not exist to try to get God's attention. Our God is at the ready. Our God is there today. And our God wants us to be free, to live in a relationship with him, free from the mindset that we must bleed out our lives in servitude to these stupid false gods. Isn't it time that we chase out the prophets of Baal? Isn't it time we rebuild the altar? Isn't it time that we call on the name of the Lord again? Isn't it time that He is our first breath, our first instinct, our first thought, our first word? Isn't it time?